Okay, welcome everybody. This is Hayder Institute of Education. It's the Certificate for in Alcohol and Other Drugs. And tonight the module is CHCDFV001. And that is recognize and respond appropriately to domestic and family violence. So I'll just show you this one. Oh, no, you won't be able to see it because I haven't shared the screen yet. There we go. Recognise and respond appropriately to domestic family violence. It's the third session of 3. So we're starting a new topic next week. And got a bit to do on the assessment, look at that a little bit. But apart from that, we'll just carry on for the acknowledgement of country. So in the spirit of reconciliation, AOD Institute of Education acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first inhabitants of this nation and the traditional custodians of the land in which we work, live and study. We express our gratitude for the sharing of this land, our sorrow for the personal, spiritual and cultural costs of that sharing, and hope that we may move forward together in harmony and in the spirit of healing. We pay our respect to all First Nation people and acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. And looking at just the expectations, what we expect, all of us in the class, the housekeeping. It's a camera college, so everybody for cameras on puts us all on the same level, and we've all got to look daft on camera at some time. Microphones off, just so that there's no background noise or no interference or anything like that. Children, animals, cars, anything like that in the background. Class breaks, it's a few hours study, so after an hour we'll have a break for 10 minutes as usual. After every hour, 10-minute break. Class participation, it's good to be interactive, and we need the engagement, otherwise it gets really tedious. But with that, just participation, use the hand up icon underneath if you can find it, and then we can do it and structure it carefully. Because respectful relationships, we're all here together to learn in so many ways. Just looking out for each other and respecting one another. With that, no smoking, vaping or alcohol on camera. A bit like a TAFE class or a meeting at work, where that's not what we do there, so we don't do it here. Could also be a trigger for people. If people are wanting to give up certain thing, then they're not wanting to expect to see it on camera with other people smoking or vaping, drinking. It's not wanted. And finally, obviously looking out for everybody else, but look out for yourself. Be kind to yourself. Self-care, strategies for self-care. Try and focus on something that will improve your quality of life every week. Most people can't do it every day. So make time for other activities that nourish your mind and soul so you feel refreshed. So with that, just highlight as many people as you can, highlight their recent holidays. Anyone? Few people trying not to laugh and giggle, but that's fine. Any highlights? Anybody? I'm sure they're there.
There's still a lot of R&R.
That sounds like a highlight, Danita, definitely.
Yeah, family time, R&R.
Some comedian said that the best Christmas lights are the tail lights of their family leaving. That's not necessarily true for everyone, but a low light is, oh, who got COVID? Jack got COVID. No way. It's tragic. Highlight, sober Christmas. Yeah, good. Good on you. Um, all right. So we'll just start. Obviously got heaps to do. There's always heaps to do. So an overview of the session is not not a very big overview. There's more to do than that. Rights and responsibilities of clients and co-workers, identifying client needs, and looking at the assessment and um, a few other things as well. There's something missing off there. Need for assessment. I've got it on my screen, but it's not on here. So need for assessment, rights and responsibilities of clients and co-workers, and identifying client needs. Oh, there it is. You just got to get used to things not working the way you want it, and then fine. So identifying client needs, first of all, assessing the information, assessing information that is given to us. We are given two types of data that we might study. There's statistical data, and then there's data that is not going to be easy to analyze, like people's feelings and emotions. They're hard to quantify, but they are still important. And that helped me remember the two names for them, actually. So we've got the qualitative data, which is the stats and the facts and the numbers. And then we've got the quantitative data. Isn't that the right way around? Somebody tell me if I've got that the wrong way around. Qualitative and quantitative. I think quantitative is the stats and the data, isn't it? Yeah. Jack's nodding his head. Head's going to fall off in a sec. Yeah. So quantitative data is the facts, the stats, the so many percentage people with mental health issues in Australia at a certain time. But the qualitative data that we get from people it describes the bigger story about the picture of people behind the numbers, which is important. So when we say we've got assessment information, we need both because they both tell a different story, but they both are important. So questionnaires, obviously you can get quantitative or qualitative from a questionnaire. If anybody's in an agency already or anybody working SurveyMonkey, if you ever have to do a questionnaire for your assessment, SurveyMonkey we've used quite a lot. You have business accounts and you can have a private account as well. It's so easy to do a questionnaire where you text somebody the questionnaire, they fill it out, and you get the results. It's really, really cool. Case documentation, so like a case file, people's the background life history, the mental health history, the AOD history, all of that is in the case documentation. Classification tools, whatever area of the city that they live in, or whether it's gender grouping, or whether it's grouped by the substance use, and then we can break it down into certain people are having certain struggles in a certain area of the city with this substance. And when things come out like that, it's really, really helpful. The Australian Public Health Survey, I think it was 2019, it was just before COVID. That's really, really useful. It's difficult to not stereotype then when it says that certain people are using this and certain people's usage is going down. And one random thing that I keep remembering is that ice use for the over 40s has gone up in 2019. Things like that. They're telling us facts, which is important. And info from service providers. So we're meant to be collaborating together with other services which is important. So we get data about a client once they've agreed and approved the sharing of information. We would get the data from mental health services, from the GP, from NDIS services, youth services, aged care, counselling services, Relationships Australia, things like that, so that we can all share together. And everybody sharing the information means that the one person gets helped by lots of people. So looking at the client rights, the needs and the rights, obviously, we've looked at the difference between needs and rights. Obviously, there's a human rights charter. There isn't really a human needs charter. People's needs differ depending on what country they're in. So a sociologist will say, or a politician in Australia will say that people need these things. But in another country, they wouldn't necessarily need the same things. When it's a bit geeky and a bit interesting, but when in Australia, in the West, in Australia and in the UK, there's a budget that everybody should be able to afford. And if they can't afford these things, then they would be falling below the healthy standard of living. And they've included in that a washing machine. Not everybody has a washing machine. And whether that's access to a washing machine or a laundrette, it's very vague. A car, not everybody has a car, but apparently, according to government statistics, in Australia, you should be able to afford a car. They even calculated it down to so many cigarettes a day. If you want to smoke cigarettes, that should be in your allowance, in your budget, if you want to use it. And things like that. And then we can go off and get caught up in healthy food. Not many people can afford healthy food. People can afford unhealthy food. And when people get like cash vouchers from financial agencies, like financial support from different agencies, a lot of the gift cards, if the people are going to buy food with it, it's not going to be healthy food. So the amount of fast food restaurants that have a massive uptake in their money coming into them from the gift cards don't often go towards Woolies, Coles, and Aldi. They go towards fast food chains, unfortunately. But we've got economic support, which is what I was on about, access to services and info, ongoing assessment, referrals to specialist services as well, rights of safety, legislative rights and responsibilities, confidentiality and consent, and a workers' code of ethics. So there's certain things that we're expected to do as well. So first of all, identifying client needs. When somebody comes to the office and they're saying they're wanting a certain support, we are AOD course, obviously. So if we were in similar courses with community services or we were in some similar course with mental health, then we would be tailored to that. But with this being AOD, if somebody's coming into a service that we're working for, it's going to be something to do in some way to do with drugs, alcohol, gambling, addiction issues of some sort. So it's trying to help them with that specific substance, whether it's a physical substance or it's something that can't be physically touched. So identifying and responding to risks or threats to safety. Threat to safety, evidence of physical injuries. The PowerPoint only mentioned evidence of physical injuries, but if we're trying to respond to risks or threats to safety, it's not just going to be physical injuries, it's going to be mental health injuries, it's going to be mental health danger. So when somebody's under threat, they could be under threat in their emotions or their mental health. So it's not just physical. Avoidance of discussing possible abuse. So they're very key things when somebody's potentially at risk. Oh, don't. So organizational policies and procedures and practices. I just want to jump to the government description first, just as a reminder. Look at this all the time and looked at it a little bit before Christmas. So the module is recognize and respond appropriately to domestic and family violence. The important word there is appropriately, because every client is different and every agency is different. So what we would do in one agency might not be appropriate in another agency. What we would do with one client might not be appropriate with another client. So first of all, it's responding appropriately, which means, also it means that it's not necessarily doing what we want. It's not necessarily doing what we think we should do. It's doing what our agency, what our advisor, what our supervisors are saying that is the best thing. And also, this unit describes the knowledge and skills required to identify and respond to the needs of clients who may be experiencing domestic family violence, including responding to immediate intervention and support needs. And this bit. This course isn't going to make us proficient to solve every domestic family violence problem or even help every domestic family violence client and their families. It's pretty much for workers that may not be specialized family violence workers. That's the level that it's pitching at. We're not expected to be geniuses at this. We're going to be working in some agency that isn't a specialist, and we're going to be expected to respond appropriately. And that's where we're going with the assessment as well. We're not meant to be geniuses at this. We're not like psychologists that understand domestic family violence completely. You might be, somebody studying this course might be in the police, there could be in the health service, there could be somebody working in an AOD service, and they're all specialists in their own field, so they're needing to respond appropriately to domestic family violence. And that's where the government's wanting to go with this module. So organizational policies, procedures, and practices, obviously they're important. They're going to change with different agencies. So we just got to know what ours are in our service. Client assessment, again, mentioned before that a lot of people use the Victorian AOD assessment, but then depending on who the client is, if it's a young person or an old person, it might not be the first thing, or it might not be the thing that you use in a different state or territory. Then allocation of services. Where does the money go? Where does the time go? Who is the person that is going to support that client? And then eventually down to case management with the where do we go from here? So the person has been assessed, we're working with the agency. What next? What we're going to do with all of the time, an hour a week for maybe 3 months. So that's 30 hours. Is it? Yeah, something like that. 12 maybe. My maths is shocking. Interviewing is needed, programmed intervention is needed, and a referral, potentially at the beginning. Just because we refer somebody doesn't mean we don't work with them anymore. We might refer somebody at the end of us working with them after a few months and refer them on to maybe a more specialized service or maybe um, somewhere that is not as specialized because they're managing to work through life on their own. So that could be a referral, or right at the beginning, we could refer somebody for financial assistance because while working with us, they still need to eat and have a house over there, a roof over the head, and house to live in. So crisis situations and long-term support. Long-term support obviously is stability. A crisis situation is the immediate response. And what may occur if there is inefficient or non-existent long-term support for the client. Any ideas with that one? If there's inefficient or non-existent long-term support, what can happen there?
Relapse.
May I?
Yeah, I heard relapse. Did somebody say something else?
Yeah,
Yeah, Ali.
I wanted to say that the most common outcome is that people will go back to the situation that they're coming from.
Statistically, yeah,
That
unfortunately.
that's a pattern that they're most used to.
Hmm.
Any change is a hard change, which I
Yeah.
mean, I've personally noticed this with, because I work in the addiction space in India. I'm in recovery for almost 5 years now, just short a
Hmm.
couple of months. And I work a lot in Punjab, which is in the Indian part of Punjab. And there's a massive opioid crisis, a heroin crisis there, a huge one. And
Wow.
and yeah, well, it's just we know that for addicts, the simplest thing is to go back to using. And what's 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 interesting is that even families consider this uh like kind of like a baseline,
Hmm.
is most of the treatment is private treatment. There's no such thing as government treatment. It's just difficult for the union government to take care of all the people that are here. So in most services, it's just not possible. You have over 1 billion people, and even if it is possible,
Yeah.
there's just no political will. So it's all private. And if there's any rehabilitation or if there's any movement towards that or any suggestion towards that, even from the person in addiction, and this is a little separate from domestic violence, but somewhere relates. When you think about the costs and when you think about the percentage of recovery or the success rate, families just even families don't have that will to come forth
Hmm.
or to take that
Yeah.
action. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, but the most common that I can see is that whatever the situation may be, if that long-term support is not provided, or if the support is inefficient, the chances of going back to the situation that they come from, whatever that may be, that's
Yeah.
most likely.
Yeah, definitely. And we've talked heaps about relapse with AOD issues. Um, so when we talk about relapse with domestic family violence, then we're talking about a relapse back into a threatening, life-threatening situation or a harmful situation.
Yeah,
Um, and that is that is quite often because that's the only thing the person knows. So somebody that's in AOD issues and domestic family violence issues, then they could it could be either one. They could relapse into either one. If they want support out of both, real relapse could be I was going to say a problem, But in the stages of change that we look at, relapse is part of the recovery, which means working in domestic family violence, we've all got to remember that if somebody is rescued from whatever that is, or they've not even rescued and they've left the life-threatening or the problematic situation in the family, then the chances, like Arnie said, the statistical probability is that they're going to go back maybe a few times before they finally leave the whole situation. And comparing it with addiction, like some people go through rehab 3 or 4 times before staff in the rehab say, "Yeah, finally got it. They finally got it this time," and they've been through 3 or 4 times. So when we put that over onto domestic family violence, equally, somebody might really, really want to make a break with the situation, but still go back a few times before. And unfortunately, close friends and family are going to get frustrated because they do in addiction issues. They might go back a few times before eventually something clicks and they decide, or they make a different plan. Yeah, Jack's saying, even if they don't return, they've escaped the circumstances, maybe so. Reduced in effective long term, yeah. And then there's obviously the issue, and we're not psychologists, we're not therapists, but because somebody's left one situation without a lifestyle change, it doesn't mean they're not going to go into another situation that's very, very similar and then start asking themselves, why do I always do this? Why do I always get the same situation over and over again? It's a different person, but the same situation. So they're all important. So what may occur if there is an efficient or non-existent long-term support of the client, yet relapse at the very least. If it is, whether it's addiction or domestic family violence, what may occur, death, harm to not just the client, but harm to the family as well. So there's quite a varied potential problem. So working with various groups, there's different clientele, there's different demographic. It's not just, we asked this question to one group, trying to look at the different people that would be affected by domestic family violence, and different people talked about the obvious ones, the ones that might be religiously motivated, they might be socioeconomic, maybe in that housing, in the local authority housing commission, maybe linked with drugs and alcohol. And somebody said that, yeah, that's the obvious ones, but if you flip that around and go into the higher class housing and the businesses and the areas in the city that are more upper class, it's quite often it's just as prevalent there. It's just hidden. People aren't reporting it. It might still be linked with AOD issues, but it's different substances. And there's more shame in that area, and it gets less reported, which there is enough evidence to say that, unfortunately. So working with different various groups, culturally, religiously, there's different links with domestic family violence with all of these, different keys. Not to stereotype, it's just there's different prevalence with different areas. So brainstorm. And just as a quick activity. The writing is really, really small. I can't read it. Okay, issues that may arise when working with groups identified in the different areas. So I'll go back. So issues that may arise working with these different groups, what would they be? And I'll scribble on. Ideas, anyone? If the different cultural groups working with domestic family violence, what might we see? You could mention the different cultural groups. You could mention the issues that come from the cultural groups. Yeah, language barriers. So I'll put that in there. All right. Anything else? Yeah, different customs, looking at culturally.
Gender.
Or any of the
Sorry,
others. Yeah, Jack.
Attitudes towards gender,
Yeah.
which is kind of big, but like say if you were talking about religious groups, you would have
Yeah.
some, some specificity, just put my teeth back in, people, around how that particular group talks about gender and gender expectations, which would be different from sexual identity, where someone might be unwilling to report violence because it's same gender violence.
Yeah. It doesn't really fit into any of them. That's why I put it separately. It's a bit of cultural, a bit of sexual identity, sometimes religious affected. Some more, anyone?
I suppose with age, you could have the challenge of if it's a minor who's reporting violence, and that presents its own kind of dynamic and framework.
Yeah. I'll put MR for mandatory reporting.
Same with disability as well, depending on the nature of the of what is going to be labelled a disability.
Yeah. So with age and the opposite end of age, like the other end, the top end of age, we've got people that are vulnerable that can't. So both age spectrums and disability, people that have a dignity of risk, so they have their own freedom of choice for each human rights, but they might not be able to process certain actions, decisions, or escape plans, or how to avoid any of the issues that are going on, whether that's in a domestic family violence relationship at home, or whether that's domestic violence in an aged care home or in an NDIS home. How do they still have human rights that they can
What I think what you're trying to point towards is how do these people gain an advocate within an institution where they're experiencing violence? Is that what you're pointing towards?
Advocacy, yeah, definitely. Because there's it's going to be difficult for any of these people to voluntarily say, how they feel because these are the people that don't know the law. They might not be able to recite the human rights. They don't know what the act is. So standing up for themselves is going to be virtually impossible. So it's going to be other people that are going to advocate for them. So yeah. All right, that's a few. I'll take okay, hold on. So client needs and associated services, when we're working together with the collaboration with other services is what we're on about. We've got safety, physical and emotional security has got to be almost the most important. Obviously protection, safety, physical and emotional security and assistance. If the client doesn't feel these, at the very best, they're not going to want to work with the service anymore. The agency is going to be somewhere that they felt threatened and they didn't feel helped. They didn't feel helped. So these are the underpinning values of making sure that somebody is getting support. They may need accommodation, they may need assistance, and they may need counselling. But primarily, we've got to be looking at protection. Are they protected from the perpetrator of violence or from themselves? Sometimes somebody could very easily leave a violent relationship and then start to self-harm. So it's difficult trying to make sure that protection is there. Welfare of children, safety plans, and legal and medical information. So got to bring all of these in. Okay, before I go into that, I just wanted to show the learner guide as well. Because it's the last session, and because there is a role play for it, and which is going to be a role play and any other assessments that you have or haven't done, everything is pretty much in here. So 3 sessions we've done, will have done all 5 topics. So starting from, if you can vaguely remember, defining domestic family violence up here and how it's changed over the past 100 years, going from how it was to how it's seen now, cycles of abuse, key values and philosophies down here, all the way through to practices for supporting people affected by domestic family violences. We might have a look at one of the case studies in a minute. When we mix our 2 topics together, AOD, addiction issues, and domestic family violence, we get to look at the welfare of children and going back to childhood trauma and something called adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. There's some psychologists got together and said that according to, I'll show you the figures in a minute, but according to the study, most people that have been through addiction have had a certain level of adverse childhood experiences. And these are the 8, that if a child goes through any of these, they're at a higher risk. Most kids would go through at least one in some time in their childhood life. Like a lot of parents would go through poverty at some time. In the navigating of life, a lot of kids would go through racism, discrimination, some sort of discrimination, whether it's racial or cultural. They might see violence in their community. They might experience emotional or physical neglect. But when they're built up, when one goes on top of another, goes on top of another, and it's compounded, that's when it's starting to get a higher risk for the child. So before we go into research, I'll show you this information. So a study of 8,500 children, no, adults, I'm sorry. A study of 8,500 adults showed that individuals who experienced 5 or more adverse childhood experiences, whether they're emotional, physical, or sexual abuse, domestic violence, household dysfunction, were 7 to 10 times more likely to report illicit drug use and addiction later on in life. So if we're trying to reduce addiction issues, if we're trying to harm minimize and we're trying to reduce reduce the I can't even remember the first one. We're trying to minimize it, then we've got to look at childhood safety, and we've got to be working together with children's services to make sure that the children are safe. Which means that when a client comes in who's an adult and there's children at risk, we need to make sure that we're prioritizing the children as well, not just the client that we're working with. So research, and that research is, I'll give you probably 10 minutes. We could go straight into break for it. So we're looking at domestic family violence awareness programs that exist that can support client needs. You're looking not across Australia, you're looking in your state or territory for the very least, which is helpful if somebody's going to access it on the phone or on the internet. But ideally we want it in specific areas. There's going to be a lot in metropolitan areas, but what about rural areas? What about country? What about people that are working with a good service set up that is working with a smaller cohort of people because the towns or the villages are really, really tiny? I'll put the words up that you need to look at. Hold on. Best way to do it is this. There we go. Domestic family violence awareness programs that exist that can support client needs. So as I said, your state or territory, and are they metropolitan? Are they rural? Who are they focusing on? The different groups that were mentioned earlier on: cultural, religious, sexuality, age. Who are they focusing on? So do a bit of research for, actually, yeah, 10 minutes will do. Oh, as well, men or women, or anybody in an agency that is non-specific. All right, we'll have a bit of feedback. If everybody's gone for break, then that's fair enough. But we'll just see what anybody has got that's still here. All right, let's start with Queensland then from Jack. Queensland Government webpage, need to know, Nambour Community Centre, Sunshine Coast, yeah. Domestic Family Violence Coordination, Department of Justice in Queensland, Safety and Violence Prevention, yeah. Any in, what about Melbourne? There's some good services around Victoria. Wire, what's Wire, Sam?
Hey, Dwayne, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. It was the first one I found. It's a it's in the CBD, Bendigo and Broadmeadows. I didn't even
Okay.
find what it actually stands for, but it's a gender and economic, they provide gender and economic equity. They refer to themselves as intersectional feminists, and they create fair
Okay.
society for women and all gender diverse people. So they offer support individually, community support in the form of, I don't know, I've logged out of that, but they also provide online training, professional training, I think. So,
Oh, excellent for services and agencies, I guess.
yeah.
Great. Okay, so we've
Yeah.
got Orange Door. Yeah, that's down in Victoria, isn't it, Mersey? Is Orange Door in New South Wales and Queensland as well? Does anyone know?
I think they're also in Melbourne. I think I saw Orange Door as well.
Hmm. Anyone in WA? What's WA got? Because down the east coast would can be accessible.
WA. Can you
Yeah,
hear me?
yeah, I can,
Yeah.
Glenn.
What? Yeah. What did you want to know about WA? What was the question
The
again?
domestic family violence services that WA might have, like where to refer people, and who could it be we're referring as well?
Oh, look. WA had a bit of a political crack fest last year where they tried to close down some women's refuge from
Oh, wow.
family violence and stuff. Yeah, there was two places, one main place for the women and children's refuge, and there was a big uproar about it, and they tried to shut it down in Perth. Um, only, only because the state government reckoned they couldn't afford it. So a few people got up and got that sorted. So it is back again, but it's not as full strength as what it used to be because of
That's
monies
in
and
Perth,
stuff.
is it?
Yeah, that was in Perth. Yeah, about middle of last year, this all happened, or beginning of the
Okay.
year last year. Uh, there was that, but there's a few other places. The community, they have a few other little hidden little nooks around the place through the community services, mostly suburbs. State West tend to take a back foot with a lot of accommodation because it's just not available. You know, people are waiting, 5-6 years to get accommodation over here. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's not very good over here with stuff
Hmm.
like that.
All right.
But
Cheers,
there's a
Glenn.
lot of rehabs that help. There's a few rehabs that sometimes will house, um, some domestic violence, women and children mainly. The men
Yeah.
seem to be sort of put out on their own sort of. So that's about it, really.
Yeah. All right, cheers. So
All right.
we'll come back after break and we'll move on and jump into the next towards the assessment, really. Looking at responding to client needs. If I bring this up, this is the learner guide. So looking at a learner guide for a little bit of a case study. Sandra and Elsa. Sandra is a support worker with an emergency relief background. No, sorry, I'm reading something that isn't there. Sandra is a support worker with an emergency relief program that provides food parcels to families in need. She notices that Elsa, one of the clients who attends regularly, often has bruises on her face and arms. Her young son, Matt, aged 7, also sometimes has visible marks on his arms and legs. This morning, Elsa had a bleeding cut on her lip and a large bruise on her forehead. She seemed dazed and confused, and Matt told Sandra that his father had lost it last night and attacked Elsa, punching and kicking her. Matt said he tried to stop his father hurting his mother and that his father belted him around the head before leaving to go to the pub. Matt's father came home early in the early hours of the morning, very drunk, and is still sleeping it off on the sofa. So, client needs, where do we go from here? What's any ideas? What we're going to do? Medical attention, yeah. Like that is a priority for both of them. Young Matt and his mum. Anything else? Yes, housing is going to be important. Not necessarily to take them straight out, not necessarily an emergency exit, but it could be a possibility for them to go somewhere. Yeah, financial help. Yeah, definitely. The rest of the case study, Sandra explains to Elsa that she must report this incident because she believes that both Elsa and Matt are at risk. Sandra arranges for another support worker to take Elsa and Matt to a nearby GP to have their injuries treated. Yeah. She writes a report of her observations and her actions. And while Elsa and Matt visit the GP, she discusses further action with the supervisor. They decide to notify child protection authorities, provide information to Elsa about available services and supports, and offer to support her if she chooses to report the situation to the police and seek a protection order. Now, obviously, there could be some issues with with Elsa and Matt. They might not want this reporting. They might feel like it's been going on for so long that they don't want to cause any issues. They don't want to get frustrated with anything. They don't want to pass the details on. They're scared of what's going to happen when their partner finds out. So all of these things are going to be problematic if they come up. But because it's mandatory reporting, we have to report it. It's just how we do it. That's the big issue. Whether it's passed on through our supervisor, whether it's passed on to the certain person in our agency that deals with it all, whatever it is, we have to explain to Elsa and Matt that this is a thing that needs reporting. which is also why we shouldn't necessarily jump into telling people that everything's confidential. There's a way to say it. Everything's confidential unless obviously there's somebody at risk, especially if there's a child at risk. That's the type of things that we would say, but to be very, very careful when we're talking about privacy and confidentiality. A lot of people would say, would never use the word private or confidential to a child. They would just avoid saying that. And the word secret has certain negative connotations quite often. So if with children counselling or working with children, teachers, or support workers, the word privacy and confidential is not a subject that they want to get into. An adult or a child might say, we're not going to tell anybody about this, are we? Whatever, before I tell you anything, you're not going to pass this on to anybody, are you? And we can't obviously say, no, it'll be just be between us. We'll keep it quiet. We just can't. We're not allowed. So moving on to the client's needs. Obviously, we looked at a few emergency needs there. Identifying limitations of confidentiality, obviously there. Negotiate and agree. Sometimes if the client says, look, I'll tell the police, it's going to be easier if I do it than if you do it. They still might not want to tell the partner, it still might not get passed on to the partner, but it might feel more comfortable if the client is talking to the police so that they know exactly what the next steps are. What information is needed and accurate reports are important. The police are going to want accurate information. Any agency, any service that they're working with is going to want accurate information. So support negotiation, build a rapport, the relationship with the, oh, heck, where's that gone? Sorry. Here we go. And completely disappeared. Right. So support and negotiation. And it wasn't sharing the screen, so this is what I was reading through. Identifying limitations, negotiate and agree, information and accurate records. So rapport, building rapport with the client is important. Building the positive, healthy relationship that is still based on the point that this might get passed on to somebody. Yes, Sam, you've got your hand up. Sorry.
Oh, what was I going to ask? Sorry, going back to talking to kids and telling them, you mentioned you're obviously not going to use the word private or confidential and you don't want to tell them it's a secret. How would you kind of gain a little person's trust, but by letting them know, how would you address that, Dwayne?
So the roundabout answer, sorry, is whoever it is, whether it's an adult or a child, working here, building the rapport to start.
Yep.
With an adult, actually with a child, when the rapport in the relationship is built, it's dubious whether they're telling you things like this because they feel safe or because they want to pass it on to somebody that's going to do the right thing with it, or because they want people to find out. They don't want to tell necessarily anybody themselves, but if they're telling somebody in a service, in an agency, the teacher, somebody in the some counselor, then it feels okay, and they're going to possibly deal with it in the best way that they know how. So that's one possibility, that building the rapport up to the extent that I'm going to take this information, I have to do something with it. It's, if you're giving me this information, it's not just for me, it's not just for you. I have to pass it on. But with adults, they might get told, look, you need to be really careful what you tell me because I might have to pass it on. But again, that's something else that it could be quite dangerous to tell a child. You wouldn't necessarily say that.
With children, sorry, let me just jump in. Hi.
Yeah, go for it, Ashley.
With kids, you basically tell them what you tell me, as long as you're not going to get hurt or you're not in harm's way, or mummy and daddy are not going to be in harm's way. We're able to keep this as a conversation between you and me to talk. You always change your language towards the age of the child. So what you would say to a 6-year-old would be completely different to what you would say to a 16-year-old. And the thing is that children that are in these situations are generally 10 times more mature than children that are not in these situations. So when it comes to it, you are able to talk to them in a more adulty language from about the age of 13 and above.
Yeah.
And just say, I am going to have to, you know, report and put this in if you are in harm's way, if mum or dad, you know, that sort of thing, or your carers. But yeah, you still do have to tell them about the mandatory reporting. You just change your language as far as it goes. But generally, you won't have anything, you won't have to deal with the children as much unless you're in youth support work, residential care, something like that. I deal with this day in, day out because I'm a youth support worker and I'm in resi care as well. So
Cool.
You can talk to them. Generally, the kids that are in that area, they understand the system almost better than we do because they want to manipulate it.
All right. Cool.
Yeah, but generally you won't actually talk to the kids that much. You won't be that involved. They'll get passed on to a youth support.
Cool. Thanks, Ashley.
Ashley, thank you. It's true. All right, so relationship rapport analysis of the situations going on, proposing an outcome, sometimes debate, more negotiate, really, coming to an agreement and close. So just getting the best resolution for the client or clients. Sometimes it's a partner, sometimes it's a partner and a child, sometimes it's a partner and children. And you could literally be in the office with a family minus one person. And I'm not saying the partner is a specific male or female, because it could equally be father and children that are trying to get refuge. Going to be very, very difficult. But I heard something there, sorry. So depending on who it is, depends on the solution that we try to propose. So making referrals, the referral, in many respects, the referral is something that we're given to the client. We're giving them almost a gift. I can't do the thing that you need, whether it's housing assistance, whether it's financial support, counselling. I can't do this thing, but I'm giving you somebody's contact details. I'm putting you on to somebody that can. Um, can I pass on your details? Am I able to do that? And when we've got the report already and they say, yes, that's fine, that's great. We may need to explain what that's for. It's quite often inappropriate to say, okay, there's the telephone number for some counselling. It'd be great if you catch up with them sometime. Is that something that you can do? It's a lot easier if we can build the contact in the first place. If we can call up the person that we're referring them to, even if it's just the person on the desk, and say, hi, I'm Dwayne from wherever. I've got so-and-so here with me, just wanting to come in and access your service. Is there a time and a person that we can speak to? Or a day, what's the best time when it's maybe a bit quieter that you can have a first appointment? And through that, we might be able to get somebody on the line to speak to the client. Once that connection's built, they can then hopefully connect them with an appointment and the best time for them to come in. It's easier if we help them build rapport with somebody else. If we're passing the information on to the client and then leaving them with it, the chances are they're not going to do it. But if we can use our rapport with the client to build on that, that's going to help heaps. So explain that why the referral is needed. I can't help you with any financial assistance, but if I send you round the corner or down the street to Anglicare, they're given financial support out. So if you pop and see them, they'll be able to maybe get your rent paid for this week, or maybe some groceries, shopping for the groceries might help. And then obviously we get the consent, so that in the end we're building the holistic care. We're not just trying to focus on the AOD. We're actually focusing on the AOD for our service, and then maybe the counselling, then maybe the domestic family violence, and also maybe the GP for the physical injuries. So there's quite a lot here. And then they're going to come back next week to us and we'll carry it on, see where they are. Maybe we didn't even get time to get them assessed this week for AOD issues. Maybe all we worked on is the domestic family violence, getting them patched up, getting them a house, and nothing really happened for AOD, which is, just as a side issue, it can be a problem when a lot of people come through like that. So when the government wants, with each client, the government wants an assessment done, and the government wants the client to be tracked the whole way through the episode of treatment. Maybe that's 3 months. Then they want to be reassessed after a certain amount of time, and then they want to be a partial assessment at the end of the episode of treatment. And if you've got a lot of people coming through the service that aren't getting assessed because it's an emergency accommodation, domestic family violence, emergency mental health issues, the government can easily move towards closing the service down or withdrawing the support, withdrawing financial support to the service because we weren't capturing the data that they were wanting. And if no matter how much we say, look, we're working with all these people that are coming through, but if they're not getting assessed, then they're not going to show up as numbers, which means they're not going to show up as dollars. It's callous, but that's quite often the way it works, which means quite often when you go into a service, even if it's an emergency, then they will sit you down, say, okay, let's get some details off you. And then you spend half an hour giving details over that aren't necessarily important or don't necessarily seem important, just so you can get $50 food voucher. But they need the information. So review referrals and services. Based on the standard policy of our agency, the individuals or stakeholders requested it, so the clients, stakeholders, and then the incident report as all got to get done. And then working with them week to week, we're working on goals, strategies, and modifying the goals, modifying the strategy. This is why they're coming to us. They've come and they've got a referral. They've got a referral to get patched up in the hospital. They've got a referral to financial assistance. They've got a referral to the counsellor, Relationships Australia, anywhere like that. But in the end, they're coming to the AOD service to establish goals and maybe a strategy to reach the goal. And this is where we're the professional at doing that. So we're the strategists. And then when the goal is reached, when the clients reach the goal, we're going to modify it and then build another strategy for another goal. And it keeps going round like that. Always setting goals, almost reaching for more goals, almost like a coach, whether that's a sports coach or a life coach. We're getting the goal, we're building the strategy, we're modifying it so that they can reach it all the time. And then you've got short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals that all at the same time, they could be reaching one, missing one, hitting another, missing a couple of the goals, but hitting another. And that's the way it's potentially meant to be working. Got a couple of videos. I'll get you the link. This is "27 minutes long." I thought it was 7 minutes long. All right, I'll give you the address, the website. That's something maybe if you know watch it at a later date. So Kim and Marley and the kids, family foibles. In relation to that, I've got a different one. Come on. Okay. When I mentioned adverse childhood experiences earlier on, there's a good video that is only, I think it's 7 minutes long. To describe this. Now, yes, this is about children, but it's looking at what happens when children go through trauma. How do they grow up into adults? Here. So yeah, it's 5 minutes long, 5.5 minutes. I'll copy the link. I'll put the other one in as well, the 27-minute one. This one we'll watch for 6 minutes and then we'll come back. So I'll put this in the chat so we can watch it and I'll pause the video. There you go. Okay, just remember to mute your mic and we'll come back in 6 minutes. And was that the one when he says to the child, "Oh, get me a beer out the fridge, would you?" or something? Yeah. Yeah. So that wasn't that long ago then, because I can remember that.
Variations of it have run for probably about 30 years.
Right. Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Just jumping back to the PowerPoint. Sharing the screen. All right. So just a bit of research and I'll I'll give you the details. Not that one though. Looking at rights and responsibilities of clients and co-workers. So with the client, there's the client and the staff that are working with them, the staff member in the agency, any other staff that are working with the key member of staff. When they're identifying the client needs, how do they get put in practice? So going to probably the easiest thing is to go to the learner guide, sorry, that we've just been looking at, and look at a case study from there. Actually, no, let's do the assessment. We can do this with the assessment, which means, so this is the assessment that you've got. So it's not going to be the role play bit yet. It's just identifying client needs. So you're the counsellor working at First Access. You work with survivors of domestic and family violence. You've been referred a crisis case today, and you'll immediately work with the client, Diane. When she comes to the centre, Diane is called ahead, requesting help, and has been directed to come in and speak with someone. When Diane enters your office, you immediately notice bruises on her arms and face. She's clearly been crying and looks physically weak. When you begin talking with Diane, you'll see that she's strong and determined. She'll explain what she's been experiencing with her partner, Sam. We have 2 children together. During the conversation, you'll come to understand that she's sustained multiple injuries, but is not ready to leave her partner yet. She's looking for strategies and support. She doesn't want to see a family doctor because of concerns about confidentiality. We're going to leave it there. So the rest of it is for your assessment. We'll look at that after break. So I'll break up into breakout rooms, about 3, maybe 4, and I'll give you that. I'll put that in the chat in the breakout room as well. And you're looking at rights and responsibilities and identifying client needs. So let me just do the breakout rooms. It's meant to be break at 8 o'clock. We'll probably do 15 minutes. So we'll go for break a little bit late, probably about 5 minutes late. Yeah. Okay, so once you get the notification, just accept it and it'll take you to the breakout room. Here's the screen share of the role play. So we got to here. Just a quick overview of the whole assessment, just in case you haven't looked at it. This is part one of the assessment. This is one of the role plays you've got to do. The assessment here, this is the role play that we were looking at. So you're going to have to act this scene out. And this is the information that you need to give to Diane. Pretty straightforward. And then you've got to answer some questions on the role play. Very straightforward. The hardest bit is doing the role play, obviously. It's just getting it right, setting it up. 10 to 12 minutes, just remembering that. Then the next part, pretty similar. Another role play. Priyanka, a South Indian woman. Is it opioid addiction mentioned? Something like that. And what you need to do for it, it's fairly obvious when it says during the role play, your assessor will be looking to see you can demonstrate the following. These. And then some questions on it, a few little questions. And then the third part is all you have to do is upload an email for that bit. Use the email template from First Access, and you're replying to the scenario here. It's not a role play, it's just a scenario. And the next two parts, it's all right. So this is a role play. So this is your third role play. And then this is another email. So you've got 3 role plays. You've got a few questions on both of them. And each one of them takes about 10 to 12 minutes. When it says 10 to 12 minutes, it's, we mean in overall from you're recording the video and you're showing your ID, saying who you are. And then once that's done, you're doing about 10, 11 minutes. You might describe the scene in the background. We'll have a look at setting up a background in your Zoom for an imaginary like office space for where you might be doing the role play. If you're not sure how to do that, helps quite a lot. We used to just blur the background and pretend, but in an audit, they preferred us not to do that. And they said it would be much better to use a background, an imaginary background, or set your home up as an office so that it's real, so you can see something in the background rather than blurring the screen and pretending to get through like that. So going back to Diane, here we go. And it was down to there. So what ideas did you come up with then? Rights and responsibilities of the client and the co-workers, co-workers, and needs, client's needs.
Where did you get that from, Dwayne? Because the one I got doesn't say any of that.
This is your assessment. It's in Accelerate when you go to upload your assessments.
Yeah, I've downloaded everything and that's, yeah, okay. I've got the Diana Fleming, and it says Diane is physically and emotionally abusive relationship. She has been in a relationship for 10 years. She has 2 children with her partner.
Oh, right.
That's the first
This
sentence.
is just Diane, not Diana Fleming.
I've got Diane Fleming.
Hmm. Yeah. So what did you get then? What options did you have? What's the possibilities? Or what can be done, I guess.
Well, we need to get photographic or evidence for a start to protect her with, if she ever needs to take it to court. So we need to try and get a doctor or a nurse or someone to take photos if we're allowed to, with supervision or whatever, to put into evidence. The only thing is, if she goes to a doctor, they're held by confidentiality. We wouldn't actually have access to those medical reports unless she was willing to let us have a copy. So she would still have to give us some sort of consent. And
That's pretty
in
common. That's pretty common
yeah.
with working in different agencies, each agency having to approve the other agency to share notes, I guess. Because we don't need all of a medical history. So we're not
No, it's
asking for
just
that. We're just asking for sharing this information about this incident.
yeah. The other thing too is, because of the two children, have they been hurt or have they seen the violence? If so, then mandatory reporting comes into effect. So she might not have a choice, but have to go to the doctor and have to have a restraining order and all that sort of stuff put on.
Well, that could be well in the future with the police putting in like any restraining or AVO. That's like quite far in the future, and that's got to be done by a court. Um,
Yeah,
but
the
what else?
restraining
What else
order,
about?
but the mandatory reporting has to be done though, wouldn't it?
Yes, yes, and how that gets done is that's going to be the big question of how to do it. What else? What's her needs, or what's the client and staff needs, and oh, sorry, rights and responsibilities, I meant, and client needs. So we've got a couple of client needs there.
Even just start working it at a fairly rudimentary level with outlining possible strategies for future in terms of exiting that environment, potential safe spaces, who they're offered by, whether there are services available to assist her to leave the premises with the children. All of those sort of really sort of basic things. Like, if I walk out this front door, where do I go? Who helps me? What happens next?
Yeah.
But she's got a job.
Yeah.
She has a job, and she's been there for a couple of years, and she's proud of it. And since then, the partner has been drinking more.
Yeah. So how does that work in? How does that what's that going to mean for the staff and the client?
Don't know.
Okay. What are the needs of rights and responsibilities? What about for staff? What about the staff in the agency? What rights and responsibilities are there? Obviously, one of the responsibilities is the mandatory reporting for the staff.
Well, she
What
can't
else
lift
have we
her
got?
hand. She can't lift her arm. So she'll have to get x-rays or whatever. She'll have to be driven. So she'll need transportation, she'll need things like that. And she may need some sort of after school care if the kids are in school, or someone to even maybe pick the children up to take to a family member if possible, or have another family member take the kids.
What about where to now immediately? What things can we look at for what happens right now? Like before any of this?
Well, she has to sign consent, confidentiality, and be put into the process. So, and we've got to try and give her awareness and a list of places she can have as a bit of an armory to the places she can go.
Yeah.
And then introduce the fact that we need to take her to get medical attention. They're the priorities.
What's more important than anything else on there? Can anybody jump in, and what's the most important thing? I'm sure we've mentioned it.
For a trust. Are you talking about trust, Dwight?
Possibly.
I think we
Well-
need to talk to her and find out what she sees as her situation and what she wants us to do, what her expectations are of the service, and ensure her safety. So does she feel safe in the situation? Does she need to get out of the situation? What does she want us to do, and what does she see as a success, and what she'll be aiming towards? Does she want to stay together as a family group, or does she want to separate and try and become independent? She may want to try and work through it and keep as a family unit. Well, we can't start sending her off to independent living or something if she wants to stay there, because at the end of the day, if she's not willing to cooperate, it's not her decision to do it, she will be resistant. And she has been in a violence relation for some time, and it seems almost normal to her. So we really need to find out what does she want us to do first.
Yeah, great.
But
all right, that's
she wants
heaps there.
Sorry, Dwayne. She wants to know what options, and if any of these could put at risk the safety of her children. And she's saying she cannot go to the family doctor, so she needs to see a different doctor.
Yes.
That's what she's told. That's what she told me.
Yeah. So the most important thing is, are you and the kids safe? I guess actually because we're a service and we're trying to be a permanent service and stay alive and working. Whoops, I've just lost my screen. More important than are you and the kids safe? The one thing that's more important is, are we all safe here? Is partner going to wake up from the couch and is he following you here? Which might mean that he can be threatening or abusive to other staff, every staff member that he sees on the way in. Is he going to make many, many more people's health a problem or risk a problem just because they've come in? So once we know where he is and we know that everybody in the agency is safe, are you and the kids safe now?
Dwayne, she just told me that the kids are staying with her sister in another town and that they are safe and that it's good that they're out of the house. She didn't want them to witness the dad being violent anymore, and she's thinking about a long-term solution but it's not quite ready to talk about it yet.
Cool. So if you've got all of these things written down, all of the things that you've got anyway. What I wanted to do is finish this off. Finish this off as, come on. As looking at the assessment is what I mean. Sorry, I can't click and talk at the same time. So finish off down to here. That's your whole assessment. Looking at what you have to do there. So we'll break off into breakout rooms and have a look at trying to do the assessment. Not actually complete it now, but how would you do the assessment? How would you role play it? That's what I wanted to do. So it'll be groups of 2 or 3 again, possibly the same ones. And if you have to do this, maybe take a photo of this as well for your with your phone or whatever you're using, screenshot, screen grab, or go to Accelerate and find the assessment. That might be easier. And then I'll put us into breakout rooms. So in a breakout room, you would be doing one person will be Diane, the other person will be counselor, and one person will be watching to comment and say, okay, that worked. Why did we do this? And what was that for? And then potentially would swap around. We might only get one round done tonight. So next week we'll have another, we'll do a different role play because it'll be a different topic. Because we won't be talking about domestic family violence anymore. See you, Merza. See you, Ashley. Record again. So just to finish off, I'll make sure I'm sharing. So this is a recap of the session. This is what we did. So what did you come up with for the role play and for your assessment? Like, how would you word it? How would you deal with it? What conversations would probably come up? Things like that. What was helpful and what wasn't helpful also. Anybody jump in now?
I have a rando
Ready.
question just because I've never done anything like this before. When you're doing
Yeah.
these assessments,
Yeah.
Do you script it for the other person who's your like, yeah, okay. So you're supposed to sort of prepare something, but you don't read it out word for word.
You can
Just
do
want
it.
to get an
Depends who
idea
you
of what
work.
this looks like.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Depends who you're working with. Somebody, because they're not studying, and you're the one that obviously we're only judging you, literally judging. We're only judging you and your assessment. We're not judging the other person. But they don't realize that. They think they have to be like an Oscar winner just to play a client. If they want to script it, that's fine. If they want to just go bullet points, that's fine as well. But script shouldn't be seen. The,
Yeah.
the the camera will be facing the counselor, you, the staff member, and the client will be almost in picture or maybe just out of picture. So if they want to hold some notes, that's fine. But with the camera on you, you might be saying, "Okay, I'm just taking some notes for what we're talking about here." But you're not writing down; you're reading every now and again, reading your bullet points. It's audits. The audit people are saying it's got to be as real as possible.
Yeah, fair enough. So when we're constructing the flow of this, so say for example with this one, you know why this individual's coming into the space, and part of the opening few seconds with the individual is going to be going through the formalities relating to disclosure rights and responsibilities. Like, is that how these open to ensure that, for want of a better way of putting it, anything that's on record goes on record after the client's been advised of the disclosures and all of that sort of thing? Yeah. Okay. All right then. So you get that
what often
done,
happens,
and then you sort of let it flow.
Yeah. What often happens with some assessments, you give your client, you give them their acting script, and you give them a piece of paper that tells them, downloaded from Accelerate, that they've been in a domestic violence relationship for 10 years, they've been addicted to alcohol for 3 years, he's beaten you every day for the past month. So all of that information would be given, you give them that to the client, but they're not allowed to relay any information until you ask for it. So in the role play, it's got to be seen that you are actually asking, so how long have you been using alcohol then? What's that doing for you? And then they can volunteer the information. So it's not hidden because you've told them that in the first place. So it's
Yes. Okay. All right then. I think I'm getting a better sense of this now. Thank you for that. Sorry to everyone else who's done this so many times that it sounds like I'm
there's always
asking Dwayne
there's
to
always
teach how to
new
suck
people.
eggs.
It's all right. There's always new people and there's always seasoned people. But we'll be practicing different ones every week. So yeah, it's fine. Any other questions, anyone?
Yes. So do I take it that you're going to be going through other modules with us?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I can't remember which one the module is next week, but we've got another 3-week module starting next Tuesday. Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's another one. It might have a role play with it, but it might not. I think there must be about 20 or 30 role plays, in the whole course. Well, if there's no other issues, no other questions, I reckon relax, put your feet up, and watch some Netflix or something.